So I want to take up the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders and its origin once again for several reasons. First of all, I did make posts on that quite a few months ago, and I don't know if any new viewers since then have actually seen that post. As you know as well, there's loads of stuff going on with TikTok with its recent sale. The algorithm is changing. We keep hearing accounts are being banned and all sorts of things like that. And since my channel really is focused on exposing and unpacking the rise of psychiatry and modern psychology and how it is destroying the education, well, has destroyed it almost already, and also destroying our civilization, as you can imagine, I don't know how long my account will keep going. So Substack, I've got it there. So if you're interested in following me on that, follow me on Substack. And honestly, I just don't know. I'll just keep going. And one day I may wake up and my account is, cancelled or whatever. But what is really important, I want to just raise again, also to do with this book, it has to do with a number of DMs, direct messages that I've been getting. Perfectly fine messages, but very interesting because I received many messages about individuals who are obviously very interested in researching things like secret societies, historical things such as Knights Templars and all that sort of thing. And, I think it's great, and people should have a right and to go and research what they want, because personal interests are personal interest. Now, I just want to say that the reason I don't put any attention or time on those things, although I know they exist, look, I even use this, Rule by Secrecy, Jim Marrs, fantastic book. But I use it for references. It talks about Bilderbergers, Rockefellers. It's got a whole section there just on the Rockefellers. Bilderbergers, Trilateral Commission, and so on and so forth. But it has a fantastic index because it has so many names and dates of people that I use that as a reference to cross-check with other books that I use, because I use many books. So just to be sure on dates and people and who's involved, I want to be sure I have as much resource and sources as possible. So I do use that. And I totally understand why people would look at that, out of interest. But here's the thing. I'm going to show you the line that I take, because I really discipline myself not to digress too much or go down rabbit holes. I've digressed a little bit recently with like the Mercury and stuff like that, but that was really to answer questions, and I think they were fair questions to look in my books, because I have all these old books and technical books. But I do try to focus on psychiatry, modern psychology, what's going on with education, what you can do as an individual. This is the most important thing, is what can you do about it? It's all fine going and looking at all this stuff and getting oneself all electrified about it. But for me, it's what can we do? And I really believe, you don't have to agree with me at all, but I believe with everything that I've read and everything that I personally have done to help others as a mentor and that sort of thing, I really believe that one way, one solution is to ensure that everybody is truly educated in a true sense of the word education. Look at my post on that in original meanings of my playlist on the original meanings of words. So we want people to be fully educated with a really high level of comprehension of reading, of writing, of arithmetic, because when you are in that position and are able to really, really think critically, then you can very quickly, identify propaganda, identify falsity, falsehoods, all that sort of things. So for me, it makes more sense to have 6 billion or 7 billion people really like top notch in not being fooled, because at least then they cannot be fooled by the real enemy of psychiatry. And I want to just tell you why that is. And I'm going to repeat and show you the stuff on psychiatry, and you can go right after this post that you watch, go and look it up yourself, because it's not hidden. That's the amazing thing about it. People spend their time looking at secret societies, and we've got right in our face psychiatry, which has kind of blossomed in 125 years and has managed to totally convince an entire planetary population that they are right, which is like, wow, the biggest psyops ever. 8 billion people. I'm not going to say all people, because people like myself and many others know what's going on. But listen, this is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Very good book. And here it says, hoping the translation is okay. I mean, that's the book that I've been using. Thus, we may say that if you know yourself and know your enemy, you will gain victory 100 times out of 100. If you know yourself but do not know your enemy, you will meet one defeat for every victory. If you know neither yourself nor your enemy, you will never be victorious. So, knowing oneself, when you know the true ability of human beings, and we're not, some sort of animals with a brain personality, which is what psychiatry pushes in modern psychology, that you're just a brain, it's all neuroscience, blah, 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 blah. It's pseudoscience. You know the word neuroscience? You won't find it in those dictionaries because it only came in the English language in the 60s and 70s. It's all part of that whole fabrication that's going on and the multi-billion dollars investments and, appropriation from governments for this and universities. But when you know the history, when it began in 1879, and I've made a post on this, it didn't happen before. It's a very specific point in time. It's like the cancer, like cancer research and all this. The solutions to cancer are really well known. But if you give the solution, that's it. The money's gone, isn't it? There's no need for those organizations. It's as simple as that. It's like so obvious. Why waste time, Anyway, so the enemy, who's the enemy? So first of all, us as ourselves, if we're super educated, really understand the game, are not the pawn, but the game players or the game masters, then it becomes a lot easier to play the game and you can do something about it. This is the important thing. And you can do something about education for yourself, your family, and that sort of thing. Then we need to understand psychiatry. Now, in 1952, let me show you. Okay, psychiatry first, let's just go back maybe 50 years. In 1901, psychiatry was not an accepted medical discipline at all, because they were managers of asylums. Psychiatrists were called alienists, actually, for a start. And they managed asylum and they dealt with the insane. Now, whether or not everybody in their hospitals was insane, that's a totally different question. And this will be taken up in my eugenics, psychiatry and eugenics series, because you can be certain that a majority of these people were not insane, right? But that's been going on for ages. It's undesirable people the government doesn't want, bang them in an asylum. So the point is, that's who those people were. And here we have, in 1952, let me get the right book, American Psychiatric Association, right? Published the first diagnostic and statistical manual on mental disorders, the book with all the mental disorders. Now, that 1952 book came out just a few months after the establishment of the World Health Organization, the WHO, and also the establishments of the World Federation of Mental Health, both organizations set up by psychiatrists who also ran the Tavistock Clinic and who also were involved in serious psychiatric experimentation during the war on military personnel. Anyway, a lot more to go on that. Then 1968, another version came out with DSM-2, so Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It's a DSM, so DSM-2. More disorders suddenly invented. Then we have here 1980, DSM-3. And by the way, that's where the attention deficit disorder started to appear. Then we have DSM-4. Can't remember the exact date that came out. And 2012, DSM-5, 1,000 pages. And as I've explained in my other post, you can pretty much fit every human being in that book as mentally ill, right? So that's what's been happening. But what you need to understand is the American Psychiatric Association changed its name in 1921. What was it before? I've already said that, but I'm going to say it again because it's a mouthful. In 1844, 13 superintendents, so this is a manager, 13 superintendents of American asylums for the insane got together and founded the Association of Medical Superintendents of American Institutions for the Insane. Yeah, you heard that right. Then in 1892, that same organization changed its name to American Medico-Psychological Association, noting that psychological is based on the new word by Wilhelm Wundt in 1879, who went and, changed this whole subject of psychology. You have to see my pinned post on that. And then in 1921, they changed the name to the American Psychiatric Association with the goal of humane care and effective treatment for all persons with mental illness. I'm not even going to go there because you know all about the lobotomies, electric shock treatment, all this kind of stuff. Humane? No. Anyway, the point is, what we're seeing here is the American Psychiatric Association is and was the association of managers of mental asylums, and they now are involved in advising all governments of Earth or their disciples or the psychiatrists. So we're basically being run by individuals who were the managers of mental asylums, and they're there everywhere. They've usurped the field of mental health and are there advising everywhere as the expert, but they literally have usurped that role. And you know, in 1901, when they officially became an acceptable discipline, there was a lot of protestation from the medical field, quite understandably. So this is the point that I want to make. We have a real enemy here. We have over 280 million human beings on psychiatric drugs. We have millions and millions of people who are sensitive to electricity, for example, and have all sorts of symptoms, and those people are also on drugs, and I made a post on this, right? So we have, if you look at 8,280,000,000, it's about 1/132nd of the population of Earth, and counting every day. And there's a push on, more and more labeling, more and more labeling. And in fact, my sister made a very good point. One of my sisters made a very good point the other day. She said, at the rate it's going of people wanting to be diagnosed with this, with ADHD, with manic depression, all fabricated illnesses, as soon the majority will be people labeled. All these new fancy neurodivergent, for example, all these new words. This is all invented. These words are completely invented with neuroscience. And as I said, neuroscience, it's not in a dictionary until the 70s. So we have all this madness going on, and labeling people mad and, all sorts of stuff like that. But the point is, the way it's going, it's true. Soon, the minority will be people like myself and like yourself and like many others who are not labeled. And the majority will be the so-called neurodivergent with a mental illness. So it's not an exception anymore. You see, everybody's the same. Anyway, I'm digressing, but that was a very good point made. So here we have a situation of psychiatry having infiltrated all aspects of governments and of life, but they were non-medical people who ran asylums. And they continue to believe that planet Earth probably is an asylum and that we're all nuts anyway, because as I've explained in my other post on the 20%, the 20% of the population who are very much driven to be able to inflict torment and pain and so on their fellow human beings, you will find psychiatrists in that category. So just keep that in mind. And this is why I don't spend time particularly going into all the history of all these other secret societies, because at the end of the day, the reality is right now, is what can you do right now? And simple things, don't go to a psychiatrist. Make sure nobody in your family goes to a psychiatrist. Make sure you keep your body in good shape, in good health, because there's so much poisons around. Unfortunately, the poison can make somebody very ill and perhaps feel like they have a mental disorder, but actually it's a physical problem, underlying physical problem. Make sure you study, you use dictionaries, have your children learn to read really well. Make sure you understand grammar. Make sure they can communicate with the correct language. I mean, here I'm using English, but obviously that applies to any other language. Get studying, get your reading, your writing, your arithmetic in order. Go back to cursive writing. There is loads and loads of things that you can do to improve knowledge, to improve competence, to improve confidence that something can be done about the situation. But obviously the most important is do not have anybody labelled. Do not get yourself labelled. Because the other thing that people don't realise, which is really, really sad, and actually that makes me quite sad, is there's so many people who rush to be diagnosed. And I'm going to refer to the UK here because I do not know how it works in other countries. But in the UK, once you're diagnosed psychiatrically, let's say, with a psychiatric label, it stays in the system forevermore, or at least for your life. So it's recorded that you've got a mental disorder. So think very carefully what that means in the long term. You know, especially if we get into digital ID and all this. I mean, hopefully that won't occur, but just think about it in terms of eugenics, in terms of population control. Who would you get rid of first, for example? Well, the mentally ill, don't you? So people don't realize what they're getting themselves into. And I'm being, you know, quite, these are big claims, but they're not big claims because you can go and look at it. You can just go and look at it yourself. Go and download these. Go and download these. Read them for yourself. DSM-1, DSM-2, DSM-3, DSM-4, DSM-5. Look at them yourself. Compare. Look at what's happened. You can go and find all that information. It is freely available. But people are so concerned about, the bread and circus, the Roman bread and circus, of all the stuff that's going on, the politics, the this, the that, the this, the that. They totally miss what's in front of their eyes. Total population control through psychiatry and modern psychology. So this is my piece today. But go and download these books and go and have a look for yourself.